Nice.
When I started getting into like football management sims, and yeah, it just kind of like took over. And it was kind of awkward because it'd be like, oh, do you want to watch, the highlights of the Monaco Grand Prix or something? I'd be like, nah, mate, I've got bigger fish to fry. We got Champions League game. The sun has come up and gone down, and I've not even seen it. That's how bad it was as a kid.
Podcast. So we've got Jonathan here with us. Hello, thanks for joining us.
Will, Ben, thank you so much. I'm really happy to join, and yeah, as I was saying to you in the lobby, it's nice to be on the other side for once, because obviously, I'm more used to being the interviewer myself. So yeah, it's good. I'm excited.
Yeah, no, it's really good to have you on. We're really excited as well. So for those people who might not know who you are, introduce yourself. So obviously, Jonathan, take it away. No pressure.
Yeah, so my name's Jonathan Pierre. I run a sports media brand called Athletes Blueprint, and essentially it's a storytelling agency used by charities, clubs, foundations, federations, everything in between. Started in 2024, sort of January, and I started life as a podcast, and then I've kind of evolved it into a storytelling hub. Yeah, I've done some really cool stuff. So, done a lot in the paddle world. I've also done a lot with sort of Striver, Heart Research UK, and yeah, kind of just other people within football, mostly sort of football, sports tech, and paddle has kind of been the sort of three realms that I've been in the most. But yeah, the nub of everything that I've been doing it's been to create stories and give back. So give back in terms of, giving people a platform that wouldn't normally have a platform, i.e. Britain's strongest disabled woman, Erin Harris. I interviewed her for this and kind of shed light on the para sports and things like that. And same with another lady who is a four-time former world champion in like weightlifting. Don't know if that's the right term, but that's what she did. And then the really cool thing about everything that I do, I suppose, just from what I do is the giving back element. So whenever people do kind of video projects with me, because I'm also a documentary maker, we donate part of the project fee back to one of three charities, basically, and that's Heart Research UK, Southampton Hospitals charity, and Cardiac Risk and Young. Whoever we work with, they get to choose, and then we donate like up to 5% of the fee back to them. So yeah, it's really cool. Had a lot of fun so far. Obviously, it is still early, year in, but yeah, it's been good fun. And I think that the coolest thing that I've kind of learned from doing it is just, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's easy to become like a business person or an entrepreneur or anything like that. I think it looks a lot easier than what it is, but my gosh, it is a slog.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like you've downplayed it quite a bit, because obviously having a little look earlier on today at the website and things, it's not just like videos of stories. Like, I mean, the videos, the editing, the way the videos are done, obviously being a documentary maker, they're top quality, and the stories that are being told as well are like unbelievable stories from unbelievable people.
Yeah, thank you. I think that, if I look back to, things that I've done outside of sport, and actually the whole reason I'm doing this is because I tried to get a job in sport and I just, for whatever reason, haven't been able to. So I saw this thing from Robbie Lyle, and he said, in no uncertain terms, he just said, keep showing up so that they can't ignore you, basically, so they can't avoid you. So then I just kind of got inspired by that, as well as I'm really big into sort of self-development and, speakers like Jim Rohn, Les Brown, Tony Robbins, people like that. So then when you combine that with that kind of like, man, I should be in this industry and no one's giving me a shot, you kind of just, it lights a fire under you. So then I kind of started the brand, and Uh, yeah, the name just kind of came from a generator. True story.
Really?
Yeah,
There
because
we go.
it's true. I mean, it's funny because a lot of kind of like musicians, like one of my favorite artists is Childish Gambino, and he also said that his name came from a naming generator. And yeah, I just kind of rolled with it, and then iterated with the logo and all of that stuff. But
Love
yeah,
that.
I think that what I've always been trying to do is I grew up with a lot of kind of different characters around me, shall I say? And that's putting it politely. But the good thing is that as a kid, I would just stay stum and let people talk. So then you kind of just let people come out of their shell, and they would just tell you these things and these like. So when I kind of got into radio and podcasting and things like that, I naturally just was able to almost inflate, even if it's the smallest thing. I was able to kind of inflate people's stories. And I think that in everything that I've done with the podcast, and now obviously it being a media company, I just like to try and make people feel special, because especially when it's an athlete, it is so individual what they're doing and the sacrifices. And then when you come away from speaking to them and you know the name of their dog, their favorite food, or you build real connections with people. And I think that that's what I'm really in it for. It's the connections that you build and the conversations and the twists and turns of journeys. And because I think that we look at things on the internet and they look one way, but there's always two sides to the coin. And yeah, I think that I've always had that natural curiosity when it comes to storytelling and why we connect with athletes, or why is it that when you put on those predator sort of football boots, you kind of feel like you're somebody else. Or if you're wearing Beckham 7 on the back, you know what I mean, you'd feel like a certain type of
Yeah.
way. And yeah, I don't know, it's just so cool. So yeah, it's been really good. But thank you, Will. Like, I think it's hard to sometimes see what you've done, but ultimately I've always just tried to put people's backstory, because this sounds quite bad, but I'm more interested in the human story of people rather than kind of the shiny things that we are attracted to. So what I mean by that is I recently done a documentary that had, well, an Arsenal invincible in Jeremy Adeyemi and two Brazilian World Cup winners in Roberto Carlos and Gilberto Silva. And
Wow.
it was really cool. It was, and I loved it, and I love working with the guys at Striver. But I knew from the outset that I wasn't going to be asking them questions like, pick your favorite players that you've ever played with, or what was your favorite stadium, or something to that effect. I always wanted to know about who is Gilberto Silva, where did he come from, like, what was the family setup, what was the dynamic. And I think that because I've always been interested in documentary and that style, and that kind of like Louis Theroux sort of style, I've never really chased those kind of like shiny sort of. As much as I love them, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to go. I'm just saying I've always been interested in the people more so than the accomplishments, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And that, I feel like I'm going to jump on and say, yeah, that's kind of what we wanted to do today, and to find out a little bit about you, but we're not sort of stealing your idea, because it was, because you've got a backstory yourself, of course. So, there's a reason why you got into this, and why you want to tell those stories yourself for them. So what's your kind of backstory?
Yeah, of course. I don't know where to start, really. I grew up in Hampshire, but I suppose the thing that I'm most well known for in terms of, my friends, or just as the backstory of Athlete's Blueprint is, so I was born with a heart condition, well, heart defects really. So I was born with multiple holes in the heart, narrowing of the aorta. So basically, there was blood wasn't really getting to the heart because there was a blockage. And then a few other things. So I don't obviously remember it because I was like 2 weeks old or something like that when it all kicked off. And then yeah, I was pretty much okay sort of start of 1994. But because of that, I suppose I've always been quite, I don't know how to say this without it sounding a little bit cheesy, but I've always felt like I've been given a second chance, or I've been given there's like a sense of purpose of me being here. Obviously people survive things every day, be it a car crash or anything like that. But I think for me, because of just it being I don't know, I still have never really met anyone in my life who has heart conditions or anything like that. So I've never really interacted with anyone of that nature. So where I'm going with this anyway is that because I've always been kind of quite optimistic generally, and I've always found, as I said before, like the stories and kind of how people came to be and how they are, then it's always sort of pushed. I don't know. It's kind of just sort of pushed me on, and I just enjoy listening to people, because I think there's something that when you give people that space and that energy and that time, it really makes a difference. And I, having been around, like when I would go into the wards as a child at Southampton General, and you would just see certain things, and I don't know, like it just kind of shows you how fragile like life can be without getting too deep. So I've always tried to be. I'm not super smiley all the time, and everyone's up and down. But I think that whenever I've gone into business with people, or I've tried to help people using my expertise in media, I've always been very like patient, friendly, warm, and tried to put people at ease, because even right now you wouldn't know it, but this is quite nerve-wracking in a way, because I'm used to asking the questions.
Yeah.
It's
I can imagine.
my backstory is just that I'm a regular person who has a heart condition. Thankfully, it doesn't affect me too much nowadays. But sport has always been my, I'd lived through sportsmen and women, because I was always just like, oh, I wish I could do that, or what would it be like to be them, or and you'd be drawn to people. Be it, there was a time in my life where, this will make you laugh, I had like Emil Heskey. Well, I had Heskey shaved into the back of my head. What? I'm not even joking. I was like,
of all strikers, come on.
it was back. It was back when, I don't know. I want to say like 2004, maybe 2002. Yeah, it was that summer. That summer holiday. I was like, no. What it was, everyone, the media at the time were having a go at like having Heskey in the team, and I was just like, I don't know. I just saw him as like a cute puppy, and like no one was like giving him his flowers, and I was just like, come on. I was like, I'm going to support this guy. And obviously at that moment in time, I'm like, what? I don't know, like 10, 11 years old. And I just kind of felt sorry for him. That's the truth. So,
That's so sweet. That's genuinely quite touching. As much as I'm laughing my head off at the same time, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But the image of like a 10, 11-year-old supporting Heskey like that, if we was in that kind of social media age now and you did that, you genuinely would be a sensation overnight.
You'd be viral. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. And I think my dad was a bit confused back then. He was like, you do realise like he's not the star of the show. And I was just like, yeah, but he's the one, so that's just who I am.
I get that. I felt this very similar about Emil Heskey. I did think he's getting stick and he doesn't deserve it, but I didn't go that far.
No, that was quite extreme. I don't know if I would do it again.
Because one of my questions was going to be, obviously being from Hampshire, what team have you got? Is your team in Hampshire? Who is it that you support?
Yeah, it is. So, I mean, I grew up as an Arsenal fan. I was absolutely heartbroken when Thierry Henry went to Barcelona.
Wasn't we all, Jonathan? Wasn't we all?
No, honestly, I was so traumatized by it that I had to go support Reading. No,
wow.
Two reasons. I was and still am to this day heartbroken that he left, because he was the guy, right? But I also then got to an age where I wanted to start going to football games and matches, and then I wasn't quite old enough, I didn't think, to like go to London on my own, and kind of I also didn't have the money to go to an Arsenal game. So
who does?
So then my grandparents lived in Reading, and at the time Reading were kind of on a bit of a hot streak, and it was like the 05-06 season, and they'd obviously had a really good buzz around them. They'd done great that season, obviously. So then I remember my nan got like some vouchers to, it was kind of like a 2-for-1, or there was like some sort of discount. And she just, she knew that I was just a bit like meh, because football season was off. Like I was a little bit like, I wasn't really enjoying sport at that moment in time for a moment. So then she was like, "Oh, just go to Reading. Like there's a good buzz. It's cheap. You can definitely get a seat."
Yeah.
So I did, and then I just I fell in love with the club. And I still do adore Reading, but the off the field stuff is just so
tough.
It's just too much. I feel like I've kind of gravitated more back towards Arsenal, especially since Arteta's been there, because I don't know, I'm not really into many of the sort of fan TV things, because I feel like they're quite negative. Going back to your original question, I like the homeliness of supporting Reading, because it's kind of 20 to 25-minute drive. It is in a bit of a weird location, so you have to like park a million miles away and then walk in, because it's sort of in a retail park almost.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that they would be my local team. But before football, I was actually more into motorsport than I was into football.
Okay.
It's just that I did have a go at a karting career, but unfortunately it was too expensive for my parents, so I kind of got canned, and then we sold. So I had a go-kart, like a 50cc one or 100cc, I can't remember, but a little blue one. And I remember we'd be on like fixing it throughout the summer, and I was just watching, to be fair. My dad was sort of just tinkering around with it, fixing it and stuff, and then
holding the torch.
Making teas, holding torches, and bringing out sandwiches, and then having a go at, saying, "Oh, Mum said you should have been ages ago." That was kind of my role, to be honest. But when that kind of ended, I'd still watch things like WRC and F1 and stuff. But then, because you could actually play football with your mates and stuff, you kind of just like got into it. So yeah, I just started getting into it, and then one thing led to another. Got Championship Manager, and then from there, the gap between like motorsport and football just get wider and wider and wider.
Yeah.
And then you kind of just get suckered into it, and it is obviously still my main sport.
Which Championship Manager?
So I think the first one I probably would have had, I don't know what year it is, but the first one I played, Dean Ashton was at West Ham. So for anyone that can remember what year that is,
What's that?
Dean Ashton was at West
02?
Ham. And that was the first one that I played, because I remember buying him for like, I think I was like Nottingham Forest or something, or Norwich or something like that. But it was like, I felt good. Then there was another player called like Christian Lucarelli or something like that, or is his name Lucarelli? I think he used to play for like Torino or Roma or something like that. But an Italian forward, Christian Lucarelli. I might be pronouncing that wrong or butchering it. But yeah, there was, and also there was like Herman Crespo was still going, and so it was around that kind of like time when I started getting into like football management sims, and it just kind of like took over. And it was kind of awkward, because it'd be like, "Oh, do you want to watch the highlights of the Monaco Grand Prix or something?" I'd be like, "Nah, mate, I've got bigger fish to fry. We got Champions League game.
I'm winning."
The sun has come up and gone down, and I've not even seen it. That's how bad it was as a kid. So football kind of took over.
Yeah, that was definitely the start for me. Championship Manager, you'd for Reading, you'd have Steve Sidwell scoring the winner in the Champions League final. Never ever would you ever think of that.
Ingemarson, Sonko, oh mate, it was good times. Graham Martin.
Love it.
Yeah,
and then the FIFA games, that was it. I was hooked. Championship Manager and FIFA. Yeah, brilliant times. Did you play football? Was you able to play football?
Not to any level, no. I kind of had tryouts, but the thing is, it's a sort of story of my life until recently. I've always been someone who would be doing too many things at one time. So I could never really, in as much as I wanted to play football, I wanted to do martial arts, or I wanted to, play tennis or another sport. So I was always trying to do like too much, basically. So I never played any sport really to a decent level. But that's my friends. They'll say I was on the street. The street, as they say, the streets never forget. So played at Power League that I could only ever. Yeah, no, I wish I could drag those out.
The absolute techers.
Yeah. No, more like someone who I used to be called like Theo Walcott, because I was fast, but I just had no end product.
Yeah, definitely Walcott
Correct.
then.
Or yeah, that was kind of the thing. It was like, you'll run a little bit like how Timo Werner is now for Spurs.
God.
That was what I did. I just sort of ran forwards, took it around people, but yeah, that end product.
So you went into radio and podcasting. Is that?
Yeah, so when I went to uni, and even before that, I was always really interested in radio and again the storytelling, because my dad, he's obviously no longer here with me. He was really big into just like radio dramas, basically, and like radio plays. So whenever we would go on like just like journeys, mostly him and I, he would chuck on like a radio play and really kind of like try to make it more immersive.
Okay.
So when I decided, I wanted to go and do this, and at first I wanted to work in TV, and I did work in TV for a short period of time. So I'd write short stories, and I would then try and make these into radio plays, and I would try to do like the Foley sounds, and like the scratching of the like the footsteps in the snow, or you'd experiment with the Foley stuff. So I've always been quite an audio sort of. I've always been around sounds and been trying to think about how we can use that, and even today, like in the films that I do, I always try to bring in an element of sort of soundscape, so that it kind of lifts it off the screen a little bit to make it a little bit more immersive. Sorry, but yeah, so I've done that, and then I got my degree, obviously, experimented radio, done community radio for a couple of years, and in that I actually worked with local teams such as Sutton Coldfield. There was a few others. So I went to uni in Birmingham, but Sutton Coldfield was like the main one that I think Hale's Own as well, and
Okay.
maybe Tamworth. I kind of would chat to like the chairmen of those, or like managers, or it's kind of like a tin pot Sky Sports, right? You'd get
What
like,
experience that is, though, early doors. It's great.
It was good, but the thing is, you would suffer ego death, like game after game. You would, you know what I mean? Like you would be like, oh yeah, because at the time I was running the station. It was like a 2-hour, 3-hour slot, and I was doing it on my own. The music was kind of like pre-planned by the station controller, but the other parts where I'd like pull the fader down and kind of be like, all right, Bob, yeah, so tell me about the game. They would, it was just funny. It was just funny because, you're kind of just in a booth, there's a brick wall. You had the microphones, you had like the faders, and it felt really, really real. And then, you'd kind of get people texting you like, oh, come on, ask this, ask that, and I'd be like, they're not going to be able to answer these things, because I can't be like, why don't you just try and put in a cheeky bid for like this retired player, because they're not going to have the money. And I didn't want to like have awkward conversations, because you want to be almost, at that age you're still like really polite, and I'm talking like 2013 or something like that. You're still kind of finding out about who you are when you go to uni. So then like radio was just, it was cool, and I really enjoyed it. And I then went on to do some bits and bobs with like the Gadget Show and some other programs and stuff, and then I worked my way into TV. Done some really cool sort of, well, I wouldn't say they're cool, but I've done some cool stuff with some shows that are no longer with us, i.e. Jeremy Kyle.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was
That is cool. No, you got to shout about that. That's like a household favourite, Jeremy Kyle.
yeah, Jeremy, Jedrind, Big Brother, Come Dine With Me. I kind of done a lot of
Amazing.
those kind of daytimey TV shows, but the thing is, right, I was doing all these things just to obviously grow my name and kind of get experience in TV. And there was a period of time where I lived in Media City, and I always wanted to, because that's where Match of the Day was. So I always wanted to try and get into the graces of, because the floor manager at the time for Jeremy Kyle was also the floor manager for Match of the Day. And I'd always sort of sidle up to him and be like, "Oh, I don't suppose you need a runner this weekend," or I don't suppose you need me to do anything for you, even if it's just preparing notes for the show or anything like that. He didn't need me. He had people, and I think he had for one of me, there was probably like 10 million people that would. But I got an A for effort. But yeah, it was a D for passing the test. Every year you'd be like, "All right, mate. Yes, this weekend. I don't suppose you can just. Can I just come and watch?" So I did try to get. This is what I'm trying to tell you. I tried to get into sport so many times, and there was other shows when I was when I lived near Media City that was sports orientated, and I kept trying, and then it just didn't happen. So then I kind of I left sport and my endeavors to try and get in sport for kind of 3-4 years. And then really what brought me back into to start doing Athlete's Blueprint, if I'm honest, it was things like The Last Dance, Drive to Survive, the sort of Tyson Fury documentary.
Yeah.
And then just many of the sort of sports documentaries, I was just sat there. And because of, being a video producer for most of my working life, I was just sat there like, I can do this. I can do this. And I kind of texted friends and I said, I wanna build something within sport. Are you into it? And I very quickly realized that people were, but then when I said, "Oh, all right, let's meet up this Saturday to talk about it," or let's do this, let's do that, it just didn't happen. So then I kind of felt, well, if you're going to do this, and I said right at the start that I'm into, Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, blah blah blah. I was just like, you've kind of got to do it alone, and if you can do it alone, then you can kind of attract the people that want to support you. So yeah, it's been a weird journey, because I've kind of flirted with the entertainment world. I've kind of flirted with the cosmetic industry and music and retail and all these other little things. But what's actually brought me back to sport is realizing that it gives you so much. It becomes just part of your identity. I think that ultimately, when you're at a football game or when you're watching things with your friends, I think the best memories I have in life, sport is involved in them. And then when you realize that, you kind of think, mate, you need to get into this full time, and you need to really try and forge a path, because that's really where your heart's at.
Yeah. I totally empathise with you there. Yeah. It's things that we've spoke about. I think we kind of said it when we first started this podcast, to be fair, didn't we? It was a case of like, we love sport, we love talking about football, we both love Arsenal. And I'll be honest, there was a fair few beers involved before Football Drop, came into fruition. And then, you find your feet as you go and you enjoy it. And, we've been so fortunate enough to have, so many great conversations with people like yourself within the sport that, we can't live that. We're not going to live to be footballers, or it's going to be very hard to, get into punditry or presenting and things like that. But we can kind of almost live precariously through someone else, learn their stories, and generally just take so much interest in it. And as you said, you learn the people behind it. How did they get involved in it? What did they do? Like, what really spurred them on to be as successful as they are?
Yeah. Oh no, I was just going to say, do you know that day where you realise you're not going to be a Premier League footballer? I'd put that up there, as like when you fail your driving test or something. It's a dark day. Do you know, like when you're out in the park and you're like, yeah, I can do this, and then you go, oh, do you know what? I'm 21 now. I'm never going to get scouted. It's not going to happen.
Well, let's put it this way. I'm 33 on Friday. I
Yeah,
can't kick a ball
about,
straight.
yeah.
I play in goal at Man v Fat and our five-a-side teams, and it's great fun. But I went in goal because I can't kick a ball. So
He can't.
I learned early doors that I'm not going to be a Premier League footballer. And I thought, you know what? I can catch and I can throw a ball pretty far. Maybe I could go and goal. That could be all right.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. But the thing is, you find like joy in kind of like staying in your lane, if you like. I mean, obviously, you can still dream, and that's what I was saying at the start. Like when you put on the shirt or something, you still feel like you could do it. So that's the
Absolutely.
I guarantee you, though. Yeah, if you were on the if you know say you go onto the Emirates, do you know when they do like the halftime show, and you
Yeah.
take a penalty for like a sweepstake or something like that? That's
Oh my gosh. I'm getting goosebumps even thinking about that. Just even going to the Emirates, I'll be on it. Getting on the pitch.
that's what it's all about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's almost, you know, that's what sport is. I think it's the best medium in the world. Like I don't think that there's anything better than it, you know, like
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say you can kind of tell from you've done jobs that people will be like really envious of, like, oh, how did you get into like Media City? How did you get into like that sort of daytime TV and doing all that? But you can tell from your passion of TV, of even like the sound, like you're talking about the sound and how you want the sound to be absolutely perfect, and you've got your idea on what that looks like, and I'm sure it's the same when you're recording your video content as well, with what the video looks like as well as the editing and the sound and all that sort of stuff, into then documentary making, and you've decided that sport is my passion. I want to go in and do that, and then as part of that, is that when you managed to secure that interview with Carlos Gilberto Silva and Ali Adair?
yeah, so the story of that is actually it's pretty cool in a way. So when I started Athletes Blueprint, and I would kind of look around to see what guests I could get. And, you know, keep in mind, before I started this, I had no contacts to anyone in sport. I'd worked in sort of personal branding, so I sort of knew how to develop relationships with people. And then just naturally, I felt that I could be quite comfortable with people. So how that all came about was I'd interviewed the CEO of Striver, Tim, and he joined my podcast, and I reached out to him originally and said, look, because their thing is all about preventing abuse of footballers basically online. And I said, look,
Okay.
I'm so impacted by what happened to Sancho, Saka, and Rashford at the Euros, and I was like, I'd love to learn more because I haven't seen a technology out there that's actually combating the abuse and the racism and all of those other things that, you know, obviously I'm aware of Kick It Out and what they do, but I just hadn't seen any like apps kind of proactively try and combat it. So anyway, done a great episode with Tim, really enjoyed it. And at the time I kind of felt, I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then I was like, one day I said to him, look, Tim, I want to work with you. I want to do something. And do you know, like when someone goes like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And, you know, you felt that it could happen, but equally it couldn't. Do you know what I mean? It was sort of on a bit of it could go either way, right? It was either kind of just like cheers, man. Thank you for sharing your story. And I'm really grateful. Or it could have been just it could have been developing into something else, which it has. So to cut a long story short, we were talking on and off. I'd actually watched Rio Ferdinand's documentary about abuse, and there was another one, I don't know if I'm really allowed to say his name, but Jermaine Genus done one as well that was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to Tim, I said, look, if we can one day do something that around this topic in this kind of style, I'd love to do that. I pitched the idea. He was really happy with it, but it just wasn't the right time because they had other things going on in business and developing the app and all of that stuff. So anyway, fast forward like 3-4 months, I sort of kept in touch a little bit. And then, I just got a text saying like, hey, you know, we're doing this Strive Aid. It's for campaigning against living miserably. It's going to be Team Gilberto against Team Roberto. And you're going to have some of the biggest content creators in football, a couple I knew, a couple I didn't. And then, you know, I looked through the list of names and I was like, was like, cool. I was like, oh, I like Jack, mate. I'd love to speak to Jack, mate. I know this other guy. I was like, I like to speak to him. So then I looked at obviously the pros that were playing, and I was like, Jens Lehmann, Gilberto Silva Roberto, Petrov, there was Jeremy Adiada. Yeah, there was other guys there. And I was like, yeah, man, it's a no-brainer. I'm in. You don't have to ask me twice.
No.
So yeah, it was a really cool thing. And I mean, I haven't really spoken about it too much in terms of what it was actually like to make the documentary, or to actually be there in the room, because where we actually interviewed them, so it was in a hotel in Brighton, well, just outside of Brighton, and on the day it was crazy because you had Sky Sports there, you had Sky Sports, Sport Bible, you had Talk Sport, like just the normal like big dogs, right? And I was in there with my cameraman at the time, and we had a fairly kind of modest setup going on, and then you just see like the scale of the proper people, and it reminded me what it was like being at like university when they had that sort of broadcast level of kit.
Yeah.
And then they were doing these really cool things, and I was there just like, this is wild. And then I just remember Gilberto just being really like, yeah, where do you want me to go? And I remember handing him a drink of water, and I was like, okay, so here's what we're going to talk about, blah 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 blah, kind of just giving him, putting him at ease, just saying, look, here's what we're going to talk about, here's what we're not going to talk about. And then we just kind of done it. But then I think, if I'm honest, the hardest part was interviewing Roberto Carlos, because he doesn't speak English. So, you have all these pre-planned questions, and of course, some things don't translate well. So, thankfully his agent and manager was there, who is English but can speak Portuguese. And it was so strange, because I dealt with interviewing people that, English wasn't their first language, and, they would speak. It was for a Korean company that I work for, and I interview people from Korea, but they're just everyday people, right? When you're looking at Real Madrid or an Arsenal Invincible, or like a World Cup winner,
World Cup winners,
Yeah, World Cup winners, Galacticos,
like,
and
you're there like, am I really doing this? It was but it was cool. It was cool, and my heart rate was probably like because you don't want to say the wrong thing, or and at the time, because I was interviewing whilst also having to try and watch the cameras, I'm thinking about, you're kind of self-editing. You're asking the questions knowing what you're going to be putting into documentary and what's not going to make the film and things like that. So then, it was a strange one, and that's God's honest truth how it came around. It was just through popping up on LinkedIn to Tim, asking him to be on the show, and then just building a relationship through that, and it's been quite fruitful so far. So for both him and I, it's worked out really well, and I think that we both have a passion for telling stories that are quite uncomfortable, isn't the word, but they do humanize athletes, the stories that we're both looking to tell. So naturally, it's a good match, and we've done some cool stuff and hope to do more in the future.
Yeah. Wow. That is amazing.
Thank you.
I remember we met Terry Butcher, didn't we? And Paul Parker, and in a similar way, just being like, how do we talk to these people? Who are we to talk to these people? Like, that's Terry Butcher.
Yeah, it's strange, but then at the same time, I think when you're kind of around, celebrities or sports stars, and for me, I just say, just don't fanboy, like, don't mark out, don't, just try and be normal.
Yeah, don't be thirsty.
I'm the worst. I go nervous, and I'm like, oh my God. And then you just realize, like, we had a chat with Clinton Morrison, and you're just like, oh my God, like, he is the nicest guy.
Yeah.
So down to earth, happy to talk. We'll go out of his way to talk to you, and you just come away thinking, they're just normal people. Like, it's honestly, as crazy as that.
He likes fish and chips just as much as we do.
Yeah,
absolutely.
you know, I was there, just like, oh, do you want a chewing gum? I mean, it was just like cool. Yeah, I think that was something that I've really enjoyed about what I'm doing. It's not necessarily. I do obviously love meeting people that you kind of like revere and love for their athletic achievements, should we say, or sporting careers, but it's also just being able to go, they're normal, they're human, they're just like you know. And I think that through meeting these types of people and being around them, I obviously already had that kind of innate soft spot for players, but you know, especially with the stuff with say like Kai Havertz at the moment and things like that, you do just think like, you know, you haven't met them, so you don't know what they're like, and they aren't purposely playing bad, or they're not trying. Do you know what I mean? So it kind of makes you appreciate that. In ways you think, like, oh crap, I wish I just had the discipline to have made it as a pro or something like that. But the other thing is, I was speaking to there's an academy coach it's a Premier League academy coach. His name's Temi, Temi San Williams, and he told me that if you had a packed out Wembley, literally one person within that crowd, 80,000, 90,000, whatever it is, will make it as a footballer. That's how slim the odds are. You know,
and that's not even a superstar. That's just
an average. I don't mean this.
Wow.
I mean this.
No, of course.
Like just an average Premier League footballer, or even professional. Really, you know, the thing that we kind of often overlook is not only players that get released and how that impacts them, but how difficult it actually is to just make it full stop. And when I was speaking to him, so we done an episode way back when, and I was asking him about, you know, do you know if someone's going to make it or not? You know, and then he kind of spoke about similar stories to people like Eze, who had kind of been released and then, you know, kind of found their feet again and things like that. And it's nuts. Like, I don't think we often appreciate, and this, I'm not just talking in football, but in other sports that I've kind of gone over, just how much you have to give up to do it. And to then give up your whole like childhood effectively, you know, training multiple times a day, every day, forever, to then you know, make it as a pro, and then just have like someone who's never done anything just be like, oh, you're crap.
Yeah, some bloke on a settee, 4 beers in.
How can I be? And look, don't get it twisted. Like, football, sport in general, is a very emotional thing. And I was there the other day when we won 5-1. I was very emotional, like in a good way, obviously in a good way.
Yeah,
I didn't see
that makes 3 of us. Yeah,
I didn't know that coming, right? And I was just like, do you know that meme of the club's photographer where it's just like, I fucking love this club? That was me. I was just like, oh, it's moments like that where, you know, I haven't enjoyed every moment of this season with Arsenal, right? For various reasons. But in that moment, I was like, I love you, Lewis Skelly. I love you, Arteta. I love this. Do you know what I mean? That feeling, if you could like bottle it, I was like, that is what this is all about. And this is why I want to be in this industry, because there's not many things in life that can make you feel that way.
No, sport, especially football, there's just so much emotional connection.
Exactly.
Like it's ridiculous when you actually step back and analyze it. You choose a club because your dad or your best friend or your brother or something supports them, and you let that affect you for 38 weeks a year.
Yep.
And literally for 90 minutes of 11 blokes kicking a ball, they might kick a ball badly and you get really upset, and that ruins your weekend.
Yeah.
That ruins your next week as well. And then it rolls on Saturday and you go, let's do it again.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous. And you'll do that literally pretty much the day we die now.
It's insane. It's insane. But I think, do you know what? I used to football, you know, I'm talking like five or so years ago. Like, football used to really impact me until then, because, you know, as you're saying, it would write off your weekend, especially when you have your friends jeering at you, sending you memes and all this other stuff, right? And it would get to you. It was only in the last 5 to 6, 7 years that I've kind of just been like, You know, there's been times where Arsenal would lose, and I just laugh because I just knew this was going to happen. Not because I was happy, but in like I was just laughing, or you just kind of be like, oh, I just because it's better to laugh than like cry. Do you know what I mean? Or get too emotional.
Yeah.
And I felt that if you could laugh at it, you could kind of get through it quite quickly.
I agree. I remember there was it wasn't that long ago, we lost 4-0 to Southampton, I think it was, on
Yep.
Boxing Day.
Yep.
And I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I genuinely just laughed and went, yeah, that's Arsenal.
Yeah,
That's
it.
just us in that moment. Like you just know something stupid like that's going to happen.
And to be fair,
It's
when
like, yeah, okay.
that also happens a lot. So
Yeah.
you kind of get used to it. But mate, honestly, when it was Reading v Arsenal and it was like 7-5 or something, and I'm Reading with 4-0
Yeah,
up,
was that the League Cup, was it, or FA Cup? One of them, wasn't it?
one of them, yeah, like even Shamak scored, and I was just like,
I was going to say Shamak scored the last goal, didn't he?
and I was just like, I have no words. I was like, I have no words. And I was sat there and I was like, Reading were 4-0 up, but I wasn't angry. I was just like, I just knew this was going to happen, and I just knew that
Yeah.
Arsenal would allow that to happen. It was humiliating for both teams. You know what I mean? So I was just like, it's a dead rubber. Like I can't win.
Also, I swear we just do it for a laugh sometimes. These sort of
I
things.
think so.
It feels like it, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Just keeps us on our toes, and it just makes you want a little bit more, doesn't it? Every time.
Definitely. That's the game. You know, that's the game.
That is the game.
That's why it's good.
That is the game. I love it.
So just taking it back then to Athlete's Blueprint, because that's not just about football, is it? And I remember you saying at the start and looking and you do you do the donations to the 3 kind of charities, and that's all related. That's all heart related as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just brilliant, isn't it? You know, you're doing what you love, and you're also supporting something that's had an impact on you in your life. And I just wanted to highlight that you've done that, and that's brilliant.
Yeah, the reason is not only because heart health is obviously quite a personal thing to me, but I'll tell you this freely. When I see players, you know, Fabrice Mwamba, Christian Eriksen, Cheek Teote, and these guys, even the guy who plays for Fiorentina or Torino, one of the two that recently collapsed on the pitch, or Tom Lockyer or anything like that, it frightens me. And I'm frightened because I think they've got a much better diet than me. They've got sports scientists. They've got, you know, health professionals around them all of the time, and these things are still happening. And I think that I just haven't, you know, in the sport that I've watched, and this is not just football related, in general, I just don't think there's been enough done for heart stuff. And the thing is with heart related things is you can't see them coming. You know, like you can almost, if someone, you know, breaks an ankle or, you know, I'm not relating it to that, but heart issues, you just can't really forecast them. And be it a fan in the stands that has a heart attack or a player that collapses due to heart issues, I just haven't seen enough done for them. So then that also spurs me on because I feel like, of course, you have institutions that I admire, obviously, British Heart Foundation, Heart Research UK, Heart UK, cardiac risk in the young, etc. But in terms of the sports industry, maybe I'm blind, but I haven't seen lots done for it. And I do feel that despite all of the coverage that it's had, I'm not certain that outside of the top leagues that enough is being done.
Yeah.
No,
I made a point recently on socials that there's not enough portable AEDs, which are effectively defibrillators. And, you know, I remember when I was playing football or even going to, so I used to watch a lot of non-league football, Basingstoke play, and they play like Aldershot, Weymouth, just like little teams like that. But never ever did I see any type of heart-related object there that if anyone would ever have a heart attack at a non-league game, there's nothing there. You know, you could for real die. So thankfully in the Premier League, you know, or Championship, League One, there probably is AEDs, but I think that the reason I'm doing this is because not only do I want to help people young and old who have heart issues, because a lot of the time, people might develop heart issues in their 30s or mid 20s. I not long ago spoke to a founder, and his dad and his 3 siblings all got heart issues to the point where they all had to be fitted with like pacemakers within the space of like 2 years as a family, which is wild. But and there was, this guy was, he was an athlete basically, doing lots of running, doing lots of like rugby or whatever it was, like normal sports that we all do. And the point I'm making is that it's only thanks to organizations like Cardiac Risk in the Young and, a Heart Research UK and people like that, that these people are able to survive, So I think that where I'm going with this is that the reason I make it part of my mission to give back to these guys is that I think that there's still more that can be done, basically. And I'm not saying that we're ever going to get to a point where, we can go, yep, heart health is completed. Let's move on to something else.
No.
You can't save everybody, I know that. But I do feel that it would make me more comfortable as someone with a heart condition that goes to sports events, knowing that, the security guards or the stewards are CPR trained, and that's a known thing.
Yeah.
It would make me feel more comfortable knowing that, not only is there a first aid box, but within that first aid box, there's a defibrillator. If anything did happen to me, I don't think it would. But the point I'm making is that I think as a fan experience, and I think as you get older, so like, I'm 31, and you kind of become more conscious of your health and your decisions, and you feel it,
Yeah, I was going to say, once you turn 30, you feel
those
these
hangovers,
elements.
they're different, and there's aches and pains, and things don't always, you're not as springy as you used to be. So you kind of become more mindful of things like that. And, as part of that, you do sort of wish that things are okay, and that you could go to any sporting event, and should anything happen, there is either somebody or something there that is a preventative to keep you going. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really excited to be in this position, because I feel that not only is there are institutions that are doing stuff. So the Premier League's defibrillator fund is great. You've recently got Brentford. They've started their Heart of West London
I heard about that. Yeah.
initiative, which is really good. Sadly, one of their coaches or senior coaches died, and he was like 28 from a heart condition. That's kind of what spurred it on. But there's sort of things that are going on in the ether within sport that are kind of helping generate more information around this subject, especially Sky Sports' recent campaign that had Fabrice Mwemba, Tom Lockyer. I think it's called like Every Minute Matters or something. I definitely would say watch that. That was really good, and I'm actually going to be doing something similar with Heart Research UK in the near future. But
fantastic.
It is really important to me, is what I'm trying to say, and I think that if you have anyone impacted by heart health in your family, and if you go to a game with them, I guarantee you are somebody who's got a pacemaker or has had a stent put in or something like that. They will tell you that they would love it. In the words of Kevin Keegan, they will love it.
I'd love it. I would love it.
If the steward, or if they could visibly see like, stuff around heart health being accessible and nearby. So that's what it's all about for me. And it doesn't just extend to football. It's in every sport. It's just across the board. And I'm not saying nothing has been done. I'm sure there's tons that I'm unaware of, and that's good, because there's more to learn. But in the forms of sports media that I see, there's not always a lot. And that's the truth of the matter. I just my mission is really just compounded by being a kid who was always conscious that your heart is fragile in a way, so do your best to look after it. because we spend so much time thinking about like, you know, our joints or our brain or other components of the body, but I feel like the heart is quite overlooked, and it's kind of the most important one.
I was going to say that's one of the two kind of main things, isn't it? Really. No, I think it's it's fantastic to just hear you talk about it, because it is like a genuine passionate thing. It's very, very close to your chest.
Yeah,
no pun intended there. But I just kind of want to just finish on the on your own podcast, really. So obviously, I know season 1 is finished now. Tell us kind of what you sort of found from that, and then what's your plans for season 2 as and when that comes out.
Yeah, of course. Season 1 of my podcast was, the name of the game was to interview as many people from different sports as possible. So I spoke to people, I spoke to the chief medical officer of the GB Olympic wrestling team. As I said before, I spoke to para athletes. I spoke to people in sports tech that I mentioned earlier. I spoke to dressage riders. I would pick sports that I was not knowledgeable about, and then find people that could answer the questions. I spoke to people in women's rugby. I had a really cool conversation with a Welsh international footballer called Morgan Rogers, and she spoke about not only being a women's footballer, but the sustainability of women's football and ticket prices, and even things that you don't often think about as men, but like when players play with a period, how that impacts their performance, which obviously we don't often think about. Yeah, so season 1 was really cool, but I think the highlight was, so I started getting volunteers to come onto the show, and these were sort of like uni students. And when I worked in TV, and I'll just kind of dovetail this. So when I worked in TV, you would kind of sit to look at the credits to see if your name was in there, and sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it would irk me. So especially if I had done something that night and it goes out and then it's not on there, and you think, oh, God's sake. Obviously, they would sort of just rotate names, and sometimes you'd be on episodes that you weren't even on, and it was just a bit annoying. So anyway,
Okay.
I always made it a thing that if I have something, I'm always going to give people their credit. And when I gave a platform to the volunteers, it just felt great. And the nuts thing about it, right, is at one time I had like 6 or 7 people who believed in what I was trying to achieve, and it was and is a podcast, but the feeling that I had when I invited those guys on to kind of do their bit, and they spoke about gymnastics. I had a guy doing who actually works at Arsenal, doing kind of like a bulletin sort of new style. I had this girl who was really passionate about F1. She's originally from Mexico, so English was her second language, and she wanted to do a podcast just to show her expertise of F1. And it was really cool. So that was probably my favorite part of doing it all, beyond the awesome conversations and contacts that I've now had through doing a podcast. But I think, drawing a line under that, the next iteration of what I'll be doing is more around, the best way to say it is more around, it's still going to be human interest, but it's going to be more around how people, not so much like, oh, how do you get started in a sport, but more around their origin story and their parents and their influences, and kind of who did you grow up wanting to be like, fantasizing to be like, and kind of, you said your granddad got you into this. What was so important to say about football to your granddad, and why? Do you know what I mean? Because
what was that dynamic?
I think the psychology behind it, isn't it?
Exactly, because I think a lot of the time we play, I'm sure many athletes will say they play because of their parents or because of their grandparents got them into something. It's much how like a musician might get, they might get started on a guitar or a drum set because their granddad or their nan or their cousin or someone like that got them into it. So there's an element of that, and then there's an element of health within sport, because obviously that's something that I'm obviously quite interested in. So I'm hoping to pick things up in the spring. But yeah, It's really is a joy of mine, and I really do enjoy it. I think sometimes it is quite a lonely process because I'm not lucky enough to have, my best friend or a really close friend doing it with me with what you guys have. But it can be a real joy when you're in the spring of it like we are now. So yeah, it's cool.
It's
I
brilliant,
can
yeah.
imagine.
And we just find that we can just talk to people
Yeah.
for
Oh, mate,
Yeah.
I could go forever. I could talk forever. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously I could as well. And the thing is, when you do have, such an interesting kind of backstory and there's reasons behind it and those driving factors, and sometimes just the amount of stories and things that, guests and whatnot have got,
Mhm.
it's fascinating. So we had a guest on earlier this week that I thought Will wasn't available for, so I sort of did it on my own. And I think I was on there for about 2 hours talking to him. So it's probably about 45 minutes of it wasn't even recorded. We were just generally just chatting after, and I was like, "Oh, thanks for your time." And he's like, "Look, before I go, let me tell you about this." I'm like, "I wish I didn't. I wish I didn't stop recording here. So this would be great content." I was like, "Look, you're gonna have to come back on again." He's like, "Yeah, absolutely." And I think that's the thing. And as you've done, you kind of build those networks, you build those relationships up, and you can kind of get them back on again and do a follow up and things like that. And it's quite nice.
Yeah, and you learn a lot about yourself, I think. It takes a lot of confidence to stick your neck out, like, message someone and say like, "Oh, hey, do you want to jump on?" And I know that we're all used to being on Zoom meetings and Teams calls all day, but
mm,
when you're
Yeah,
when
tell me about
you're
it.
when you're like talking about something that means a lot to you, and even now as we're doing this, I'm kind of self-editing in a way.
Mm.
You do have to give yourself like a pat on the back to say, because it's easy. I think the thing is, and I don't know as content creators if you feel the same, but because there's so much content, you don't always value your own output because you think, oh, meh, you know what I mean? You sort of shrug your shoulders, but
Yeah,
really, in this moment, it's like this is unique. No one else is doing what we're doing right now. No one's saying
true.
exactly the same thing that we're saying. So where I'm going with
true.
this is, I think that just because there's lots out there, it doesn't mean that yours isn't important. And I think that that's something I really struggled with when I started podcasting because I didn't think anybody would listen. And, you could see like the views and they weren't obviously that high. But if you got that 100, you got those 100 people and you had them right in front of you and they were listening to your podcast like it was a live audience, that would make so much difference.
Course would. What a feeling that would be. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's just numbers.
Yeah.
You don't have that live audience. You don't have that interaction. It's the same as these influencers on Instagram and these Instagram models and things like that. For example, it's just likes. You don't actually have that real engagement or anything like that. It's just you look at it and say, "Oh, I've only got 1,000 likes." It's like, "Oh, I've only got 1,000 plays." But if you could, like, you've got 1,000 plays, 1,000 people have decided, "I want to listen to this podcast. This is brilliant."
That's like 2 or 3 cinema rooms, if not more.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's wild, and they're just looking at you like, "Go on, do something."
Yeah, yeah. You
So,
sort of tap the microphone.
so yeah, and that's what I mean. It's like it's so hard. Like the optics don't always do it justice, but it is really enjoyable. And the best thing is that anybody can do it. So I'd encourage everyone to start podcasting because I think it boosts your self esteem. I think it boosts your communication skills, and you get to meet people that you would never ever otherwise meet, and that's the best part of it. Especially if you're kind of you know you enjoy adventure and you have that sense of adventure within you. It's the greatest thing.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
I think that is a perfect way to end this week's episode.
I agree.
Jonathan, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Likewise.
Guys, hope you've enjoyed that at home and hopefully that's inspired you. Make sure you check out Athlete's Blueprint as well.
Yes.
It's available on all major podcast platforms, so have a listen. Let them know what you like and share it with your friends as well. As we said, every play makes such a difference and it's not just a number, as we've just rightly said.
And we'll put all the
Amazing.
links in the descriptions and things like that, so you can find everything if you're listening.
No excuses. Click it straight away, guys, okay?
Please do. And no, honestly, continue to support the Football Drop because it's not often that you come across, a football podcast that is so unique. I think a lot of football podcasts try to be something, but I feel with you two, it's very natural, it's very authentic, and it's very, it's the right balance between being jovial and unserious to being, understanding and patient and, actually, just giving people a platform. So, it's
Appreciate
great
that.
to have done this, and I'm always up for round 2. So
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Lovely.
Appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
amazing.
Thanks, guys.
All right,
Thank you.
bye.
It is stopping.